Imagine walking into a warehouse at midnight and the place is alive. Conveyors moving, pallets shifting, shelves updating, orders being picked up and routed. Yet it's quiet, efficient, and it barely needs the lights on. Not because it's some dystopian fantasy, but because the machines don't need lighting the way humans do. They navigate with sensors, depth cameras, mapping, scheduling software, AI coordinating what is essentially an industrial ant colony. And the reason this matters is because China isn't talking about this like it's a debate. China is building it, scaling it, and turning it into a competitive weapon. The International Federation of Robotics reported that China installed 27,288 industrial robots in 2023, which was 51% of global installations, more than the rest of the planet combined in that year. Reuters reported that China's robot density hits 470 robots per 10,000 workers in 2023, overtaking Germany. That's not innovation theatre. That's the physical economy being automated at scale. And while China treats AI and robotics like national infrastructure, factories, logistics, ports, manufacturing, we in Australia keep flirting with the most self-sabotaging idea imaginable. Suppress it, slow it down, ban it, pause it, regulate it into the ground until it's harmless. That instinct is not new, it's generational. Every major technological shift has triggered the same reflex in older cohorts. This is dangerous, this is corrupting, this is ruining society. People wanted to ban television, then video games, then the internet, then smartphones. Even now, you'll hear the smartphone panic. We should ban them for the kids. Ban social media, ban everything. The problem is, you can ban yourself into irrelevance. The world doesn't stop because you are uncomfortable. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. The West isn't in a position to play purity politics with productivity. Australia is in a productivity slump. This is not a vibe, it's measurable. The ABS has pointed out that by the June quarter 2025, labour productivity levels were roughly back around pre-pandemic levels, and where they were in late 2019. The RBA has also discussed how slowed productivity growth weighs on supply capacity and incomes. This matters because productivity is basically the engine of living standards. When productivity stalls, everything feels like it's getting more expensive and harder, because it is. Australian Bureau of Statistics, Reserve Bank of Australia, and the housing crisis is the perfect case study in how going backwards looks in real life. Australia has seen a huge housing shortage, and the pipeline isn't meeting national targets. The National Housing Supply and Affordability Council has warned about supply constraints even as conditions shift. Industry commentary, drawing on recent Productivity Commission findings, has pointed out a brutal claim. Housing productivity has fallen massively over decades, meaning it takes more effort and cost to deliver the same output. We are effectively making housing slower, harder, and more expensive in a country that should be able to build homes in its sleep. Now zoom out. We are a nation drowning in resources. Iron ore, coal, gas, critical minerals, yet we behave like a raw materials suburb of the future rather than a builder of it. Australia's own government resources reporting shows iron ore is forecast to remain the largest export earner and around a quarter of resource and energy commodity earnings over the next couple of years. Meanwhile, the Future Made in Australia agenda explicitly argues we need to refine and process more critical minerals onshore to capture more value up the supply chain. That's the core issue. If you only export the dirt, you import the intelligence. You export lithium, you import batteries. You export ores, you import finished machines. That is how a resource-rich country ends up feeling poor. And that's why AI isn't some optional tech bro toy. It's the lever that turns raw potential into actual capacity. How you modernize industry, reduce waste, and compete with countries building automated supply chains at scale. Now look at our energy transition, because this is where the political argument gets real. The Albanese government is pushing major programs like the Capacity Investment Scheme, which underwrites revenue to reduce investor risk and accelerate new renewable generation and storage. There's also Rewiring the Nation, investing in transmission so renewable energy can actually reach the grid reliably. On the emission side, the safeguard mechanism applies to larger emitters and has been reformed, with a government review scheduled in 2026 to 2027. You can support those goals and still say the obvious. If you do this transition badly, if you create endless friction, delays, inefficiencies, you don't just fail on climate, you fail economically. And you create political backlash that stalls the whole thing. And the real bottleneck isn't ideology, it's physics and infrastructure, the grid. AEMO's reporting shows constraints are a real feature of the system in certain locations and conditions. And transmission delays can worsen the ability to use cheap renewables. Independent analysis has also modelled how delays in planned transmission build-out can lead to large amounts of additional curated renewable energy. Translation: we can build the generation, but if we can't move the electricity, we end up wasting it or blocking connections. This is where AI belongs. Not as a culture war topic, but as an optimization layer across the whole system. Forecasting congestion, management, predictive maintenance, scheduling storage, balancing supply and demand. Preventing failures before they happen. The energy transition without AI isn't brave, it's clumsy. Now add demographics, because this is the silent reason automation is inevitable. Australia's fertility rate is at record lows. ABS reported a total fertility rate of 1.48 in 2024. This isn't just a social trend. It's a labour and tax-based problem over time. At the same time, parts of the workforce face ongoing shortages, even as conditions fluctuate. Jobs and Skills Australia has reported easing shortages overall, but gaps persist. The blunt reality is, in an ageing society with a lower birth rate, we'll just hire more people. Becomes less and less believable. AI and automation don't just replace workers. Increasingly, they replace missing workers. Jobs and Skills Australia. Now here's where people expect me to say, so AI will take your jobs. That's the wrong frame. The real story is, AI changes what a job is. It's not man versus machine, it's man plus machine. People supervising systems, handling edge cases, making judgment calls, doing quality control, managing risk, and using AI as a force multiplier. And this is where Australia has a choice. Be a country that fights the tool, or a country that turns the tool into leverage. Because we already know how to do automation when we want to. Mining is the proof. Rio Tinto, for example, describes where 90% of its haul trucks fly autonomous, improving safety and productivity. Australia can lead when it chooses to. The question is whether we choose that mindset across the rest of the economy, or we keep acting like technology is a moral containment. Now let's bring in the construction robot. Because this is the moment the script needs to land like a hammer. While we argue about whether AI is scary, Australia already has prototypes that could change housing and construction. The ABC reported on a spider-like semi-autonomous robot called Charlotte. Developed by Crest Robotics and Earth-Built Technology, combining robotics with 3D printing to build structural elements. With researchers pointing labour to constraints and delays as key housing challenges. That's not a gimmick. That's a tool aimed directly at the choke points of Australian housing: time, labour, and cost. And then there's Lighten 3D, whose AI-powered 3D construction technology has been used in building what's described as Australia's first 3D printed multi-storey house, with reporting noting a 4-bedroom build timeline measured in weeks rather than the typical This is what people miss. AI doesn't just automate office work. It changes the physical world. It changes the speed a country can build homes, deploy infrastructure, run supply chains, and modernise the grid. So when someone says we should suppress AI, what they're really saying is we should suppress our own capacity to compete and build. And yes, we should regulate our AI, of course. We should demand safety standards, transparency where appropriate, strong privacy rules, and liability when systems cause harm. But regulation is not suppression. Regulation is how you domesticate power without handing it over to someone else. Because if Australia overreacts and strangles AI adoption, while China keeps scaling robotics, factories, logistics, manufacturing, you get a future where Australia becomes even more dependent. Not just on imports, but on foreign industrial capacity. You can't run a modern country on vibes and speeches. You need throughput. You need infrastructure. You need the ability to build. And that's why I keep saying Australia is at risk of going backwards. Not because we lack talent, and not because we lack resources. We have both. But we act like a country that's terrified of its own potential. We export value, import finished products, and then pretend we are transitioning while getting stuck in delays, bottlenecks, and culture war paralysis. This is the fork in the road. One future is us working side by side with AI, using it to modernise mining, expand advanced manufacturing, optimize energy, accelerate housing construction, build critical minerals, processing onshore, and turn Australia from a quarry into a builder. The other future is us banning, suppressing, delaying, overreacting, until we wake up and realize the world didn't slow down. It just chose different winners. So no, don't suppress AI. Don't treat it like a sinful temptation. Treat it like electricity. Powerful, dangerous if misused, transformative if integrated properly. Because the question isn't whether AI is coming. It's whether Australia is going to use it to build, or whether we are going to keep arguing while other nations quietly automate the world in the dark.